Hi BC, back with another reply to Freddie Bigstar's ongoing 1970s Gimmie 10 thread, dealing with taking the 70s on a year by year basis, and we're now on 1973. A very tough one because it was an extremely good year for classic album releases. There's a few that I really wanted to include in this. Iggy and the Stooges' Raw Power, which I only have on CD anyway. Bowie's two releases from that year, Aladdin Sane and Pin-Ups. Steely Dan, Countdown to Ecstasy. I've just left those ones out. Narrowed it down, but I'm going to start off with I'll start off with a CD. It's the one and only CD I'm going to show, but I just have to show this. This is Spectrum by Billy Cobham. So groundbreaking jazz fusion album released in 1973, and this particular copy, CD copy, I got this when I went to see Billy Cobham live in three years ago with Ben Costello, because it was a 40th anniversary performance of the album in its entirety by Billy Cobham. And well, okay, maybe I should talk about the album a bit first, but I'm sure a lot of you probably have this on vinyl or are familiar with it. The title, or the track Stratus, has a bass line that's sampled by Massive Attack. So just fantastic album. And anyway, back to the concert. It was a 40th anniversary tour by Billy Cobham, performing the Spectrum in its entirety. And I picked this up and I got this signed by Billy Cobham after the gig. So that is Billy Cobham's signature there. But Ben brought along pretty much every Billy Cobham album he has, and got them all signed by him, and I shook hands with him, and it was a big queue of people, so I just said a few brief words to him. But so that's the ticket. So it's Spectrum 40. So Spectrum, that's Billy Cobham's Spectrum album. First off, in my 1973 Gimmie 10 response. Now, I should mention that there's considerable Moog contribution by Jan Hammer. And continuing with my next number 2, Mahavishnu Orchestra, Birds of Fire, which also features Billy Cobham and Jan Hammer, as well as John McLaughlin and Jerry Goodman on violin. So Mahavishnu Orchestra, so they've just released a fantastic series of albums in the early 70s. This one came out in 73 on CBS, and so continuing that groundbreaking jazz fusion experiment of Spectrum. But number 3 is an album by a former member of Soft Machine. He was actually only on their first album, but that is Kevin Ayers. and this is Banana Moor. Yeah, so this is more kind of song. This is, well, compared to say Robert Wyatt, this is more songwriter based, I suppose, but still with a kind of a Canterbury vibe. Great album. There is one song on here that is he was involved with Nico, going out with Nico the Velvet Underground, and he also did that album with her and Eno. What was it called? Her, Eno, and John Cale. Was it June the 6th, 1974? Anyway, this came out the previous year. Banana Moor, and there's a fantastic songwriting and technique on here. I have a couple of his solo albums, and yeah, really love his solo work. In that period. Moving on, Zappa, Frank Zappa. This was his contribution to 73. Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, overnight sensation. It was not his best album, but definitely one for this thread, I think. I'm the Slime, Dirty Love, a lot of kind of scatological and kind of risque lyrics. This is a late 70s German repress from around 77, I think. But yeah, pretty crazy artwork as well. Yeah, so Zappa and the Mothers, overnight sensation. And now, yeah. So on the 72 thread, I featured Roxy Music's debut album, self-titled debut. Following year, they followed it up with this. For Your Pleasure, and this was the last Roxy album to feature Brian Eno. He left soon after the release of this, and this is really where he comes to the fore. There's this kind of Eno in some of the tracks. Eno brings a kind of a krautrock influence almost in. You can kind of you can make out where he was obviously listening to a lot of stuff that's coming out of Germany at the time. One track in particular, can't think of. Yeah, but last album to feature Eno, but that would not be the last we would hear from him. He also brought out, that year he released his first solo album, Here Come the Warm Jets. Was strongly tempted to feature that one, but instead I will feature another album which he put out in 73 in collaboration with Robert Fripp of King Crimson, and that is No Pussyfooting. And this is a French repress from the late 70s, I think. But yeah, so this would not be the last time they collaborated, of course. Yeah, so basically two very long, spacey tracks featuring Fripp's, very distinctive guitar style, um, uh, with Eno's use of tape recorders and sequencers. So this was a kind of a taster of what we could come to expect from Brian Eno. Is kind of very experimental, kind of a proto ambient. They would go on to do another album together, of course. 2 years later. Evening Star, which I don't have, although I don't have it on physical format. Yeah, so okay, this next album has been shown by Freddie, but I could not include this. John Martyn's Solid Air, and what is there to be added about this album? I first listened to it in the late 90s, I think, and Freddie has spoken pretty extensively about it, but really, his it's kind of where kind of the jazzy influence meets blues, meets folk, and his highly distinctive guitar style, and the use of what should you call it? Kind of the modified sound pedal effects which he utilizes on this album, and of course the extremely strong songwriting, including the title track Solid Air, which was about his friend Nick Drake. So so I had to include that. Next up is an album which I was kind of vaguely aware. I'd seen it in the wild somewhere at some point, and knew the cover to see, because it's a pretty distinctive cover, and I happened to come across it on a dig with Ben Costello and picked it up pretty cheaply. That is Pipe Dream by Alan Hull. Alan Hull, he was in Lindisfarne, and this is quite similar, kind of along fairly similar lines to what he was doing in Lindisfarne, but this is a really good folk rock album. This is an early 80s reissue, but I actually realized that it's been ages since I played this, so I'm going to give this a spin as soon as I finish this video. So that's Pipe Dream by Alan Hull, and perhaps lesser known classic of the year 73. Bob Dylan, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, his soundtrack album to the Peckinpah movie of the same name, which came out in 73. This album is, it's kind of, for one thing, a lot of it is instrumental. There's not much singing from Bob on this album, which may please some people, but it's pretty stripped down. It's kind of Dylan just stripped down to the basics, and his usual kind of lyrical kind of flights of fancy are absent here. So it's just really is just a kind of a musical treat here from Mr. Zimmerman. I'm gonna finish off with Irish group Horslips, band, Irish band who formed in the early 70s, and they were the first group to fuse Irish traditional music with rock. This is an album called Attain, and it is basically a concept album about a ancient Irish Celtic legend. So it's basically progressive rock mixed in with Irish traditional music elements. This is probably their strongest album. They continued on into the late 70s, and some of their later output was a bit patchy, but this is definitely their strongest album, and it features one of my favorite tracks of theirs, Derek Doom. So I love that cover as well. That's a fantastic cover. Again, I think this is a later reissue, possibly late 70s reissue, I think. Okay, so we're on 17 minutes, so that's not too bad for my usual standards. Yeah, so that's my 73, Gimmie 10, 73 response to Freddie Bigstar. There's been some interesting videos put up so far by Ben Costello and Gideon Strumpet, and I'm not 100%, I think there's one or two others as well, but anyway, enough waffling. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be looking forward to seeing everyone else's responses. So take care.